Ruffian is about crime reduction. It's about going in, knowing a neighborhood, taking over, and fixing things. Career police officers don't know how to do that. Cops do.
What's your point of view on the thin blue line as you wrote in the book?
Well, it's real fucking thin. How about that? Cops love it when other cops fail.
How much blame does law enforcement or responsibility they have in that? There was no glory in this book. It's Lou Pimber. Welcome to Lou Pimber Speaks. You know, today I have a very special guest. I'm going to talk about him here in a minute, but at the moment, I actually find myself at the Westin here in Paris, France, with my wife and a few other business partners. And on my flight over here, I finished a book called Ruffian. Ruffian is the French way I said, I think, but I don't think it's in French. But I have a very, very special guest. His name is Kevin Grogan. And Kevin is a former law enforcement officer out of Savannah, Georgia. Is that correct, sir? And,
yes, sir.
And a detective in various levels of experience and fields. But I'm honored to have you here today, author of 2 books. This is the second book you've written, right? And so, Kevin,
number 2.
If you don't mind just kind of sharing with us a brief introduction, you know, who you are briefly, and we'll get into your story, your backstory, and then what led you to writing some books. And we'll even talk a little bit about the book and kind of what's next for you.
Absolutely, man. I appreciate you having me on, especially all the way from France.
Yeah, man.
No, you know, I'm an Army vet. Spent a bunch of time in Europe. So I spent a few glorious days in the city of Paris myself. But I was stationed out of Heidelberg, Germany, which was the headquarters of the United States Army Europe. So luckily, I got to see a ton of Europe while I was there. But once I got done with the all expense paid trip to the desert, came back to Fort Stewart, Georgia. And when I got out, I took a job with the PD in Savannah.
And you stayed there?
Yeah, man, I was in Savannah, Georgia for about 3 hours because I'm from right outside of Hartford, Connecticut originally.
Okay.
But I was in Savannah for about 3 hours and knew I'd never leave. It just, I love the tempo. It's such a beautiful city. But then, you know, anytime anybody's involved in law enforcement, you see different side of the city that most people don't know about. And I definitely saw that. So, you know, the books kind of chronicle the other side of Savannah. My pitch when I'm sitting at book signings and stuff, I tell you, this is the stuff they don't tell you about in tourist brochures.
You show up, what do you say? And you leave on probation. You show on vacation, leave on probation. What do you say?
That's exactly. Come on vacation, leave on probation. That's our motto down there.
Man, hey, look.
Well, it used to be when they let you lock people up. Now you don't do that anymore. So,
hey, look. Let's. So you were. Did I read correctly? You were an MP in the Army, right?
Yeah.
And what years did you serve?
So, 99 to 2004.
Right on, man.
So I came in you know, when we hadn't been at war since Somalia, basically in 93. And then halfway through, you know, they hit the towers, and immediately thereafter, I was in Iraq, and you know, I was working for the commanding general of the United States Army Europe, a guy named General Meigs. May he rest in peace. And you know, we dipped into Afghanistan when it was starting, so we could see, you know, a lot of what was going on there. Then I PCS'd to Fort Stewart, home of the mighty 3rd Infantry Division, who, when I got there, they were actually already in Kuwait. But I came to Georgia prematurely before my PCS date because my son was being born. So I was there for him being born, went back to Germany for a week, out process, came back to Georgia, was in Georgia for about a month, and then they sent me over to the desert. So,
right on, man.
But yeah, it was a good run. But again, you know, Savannah was just a great place to settle.
And you did some protective detail work as well, right? Executive protection type work as well?
Yeah, that's what I was doing with the general. So I wound up on the protective service team for the commanding general of the United States Army Europe. And anytime you had a foreign dignitary come in, we'd pick up their protection stuff.
There's somebody here
Great experience
on my floor who's got a protective detail outside. They've been there all day long. They
got cameras and stuff, and guys sitting by the door.
Yeah. And like, you guys stay on that wing, I'll be on this wing, man.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so
all that noise.
What led you into law enforcement? I mean, I know in the Army you were an MP. Did you know you're going to be a law enforcement officer, police officer?
Oh yeah, man. I always knew that since I was a kid.
Yeah.
You know, I have a degree in criminal justice. When I graduated college, Westfield State College, which is now Westfield State University in Massachusetts. You know, I was a criminal justice major, political science minor. And the week I graduated from college, I got picked up by my hometown police department in Windsor, Connecticut.
Okay.
And, you know, I've told this story a million times, but basically, you know, I was the youngest of 5 kids in a very small town. You start working for the police department. I wasn't even out of the academy yet. And people are like, oh, well, I know Grogan every time they get stopped.
Yeah.
So, you know, the veteran guys, they didn't want to hear that shit. They're like, who the fuck is he, you know? Yada. So, but my world was very small. So I joined a gang called the United States Army, and kind of saw a bit more of the world. But it was great for me because my first duty station was Germany. First thing I did when I was in Germany is they sent me to Kosovo. Like I said, I was a political science minor. So most of what I studied in the mid 90s was the breakup of Yugoslavia. So getting to go to Kosovo and see it boots on ground for what was actually happening was really, really educational. Then when we came back from deployment, I got picked up to go to the CG's team, the commanding general's team, for protection. And then I just traveled Europe, you know, which was awesome. I got to see, you know, almost the entire continent, and some pretty cool shit when you hang around 4 stars, you know?
Yeah, for sure. Now, when you left the Army, that's when you transitioned into, actually, you were mature enough to understand that you were young to be in law enforcement at the time, and you still needed some living to do. And some people don't recognize that sometimes, you know, and so, to your credit, you recognize that, and you went into the military where you grew a little bit, right? You got a little mature, got some life experience,
for sure.
A lot of good training, high-speed training from the Army. And did that pay off for you pretty good?
Oh, no doubt. And the thing about that, and the thing I always credit to everything, any success I ever had, is great leadership. My first department in Windsor, Connecticut, great leadership. You know, guys that were like, hey man, maybe you need to take a look at yourself, look at things, grow up a little bit, learn, and then come back to it. So that's what I did. Then, you know, I went and had outstanding non-commissioned officers in the Army, great drill sergeants, great team leaders, great squad leaders, and that kind of stuff. And then again, I got put on this cushy and beautiful detail to work with the 4-star general.
How did that
everybody
happen?
associated with that guy.
How did you get that?
Just luck, man. Just luck.
Right place, right time.
Right place, right time. You know, I wound up, you know, just being in Heidelberg was lucky enough, because most MP companies they have 4 platoons, or 5 platoons if you include headquarters, but they have 4 line platoons. We actually had 5, and that fifth platoon was physical security for headquarters and a protective service detail.
Very cool.
So I only had to stand on the gate for a month, which was awesome. And then September 11th happened, and they beefed up the team, which got me on the CG's team. But, you know, it's all who you know. When I was in Kosovo, a buddy of mine was a super high-speed squad leader. When we came back, they bumped him over to be the team chief, and he brought me with him. So it was a good deal for me.
Right on, man. Right on. And then you came out of the Army and went to work in Savannah?
Yeah. And you know, I got home from Iraq on March 11th, 2004, and I graduated the police academy in Savannah on March 11th, 2005.
Got it. What was your biggest takeaway from the Army? Like your biggest, what did you learn?
Leadership, no doubt, leadership. You know, the importance of leadership, the importance of being a leader and leading from the front. You know, there's a lot of guys who tell you, hey, you got to go do this. This is how you do it. And then they're the guys who serve with it. They go and do it, and they say, hey, come with me. And that was exactly what I learned. And again, working for a guy like General Montgomery Meigs was, if you want to talk about leadership and learn anything about leadership, working for a guy like that, he personified it. He was a legacy in the Army. His great uncle was the first quartermaster general of the Army, the Union Army, second in command to Ulysses S. Grant. If you go to Arlington Cemetery, the main artery through the cemetery is Meigs Drive.
Okay.
So it's named after them. But then his father was killed in World War II. He actually took me to the spot, the crest of the hill where his father was killed. Wow. An 88 millimeter round took his head off as he was sticking it out of a tank. He was a tank commander. And then, but he had a PhD in history on top of being a general. So he knew the ins and outs of just about everything. But the thing he knew most about was leading troops. And he and at the time, Army Chief of Staff, General Eric Shinseki, who took a lot of heat for everything that happened when he was the Chief of Staff, the Abu Ghraib scandal and all that kind of stuff. He took a lot of heat for that. Then he was appointed, when he retired, was appointed to Veterans Affairs, the Secretary of Veterans Affairs. And that's when, they went into Walter Reed and saw the mistreatment and all the things that were happening there. So he took a heat round for them. But they said a lot of things about General Shinseki, who I met on numerous occasions because he and General Meigs were platoon leaders in Vietnam together. Oh, wow. But General Shinseki, was a guy who loved troops. He loved soldiers and took care of soldiers. General Meigs was the same way, and they instilled that. I saw that at the highest level of the Army, right. Taking care of troops. But again, I had learned that from my sergeants and first sergeants and company commanders because I've always been blessed with great leadership and, taking advantage of it.
Right on. And your son is also serving right now, right?
He is. That's, my proudest military achievement is my son.
Right
on, He is man. A member of the 75th Ranger Regiment, and he's a combat medic, and he's doing his thing right now. So,
gotta love the combat medics, man. Gotta love the combat medics. Hey, look, let's talk about the book a little bit. All right, let's talk about this book a little bit.
Absolutely.
I read it, and I have to tell you, I've read a few police books. I mostly read a lot of business books, stuff like that. But of the police books that I've read, the law enforcement related books, there was no glory in this book. There was no look how cool I am, none of amazing stuff I'm doing, right? There was no glory. It was all of your mistakes. You always listen. It's almost self-deprecating at times because you describe how everyone else was so much more qualified to do what you were doing with them, but yet you felt privileged and thankful to be there. So
yeah, man. I mean,
it almost goes with your personality, your character. So I appreciate that because it's a very honest point of view.
But the thing is, it's the second book. So the first book, so my career ended pretty ugly. I got a DUI, and then I got roped into some political shit, and that's what the first book was about. But the first book centered around a very proactive crime suppression unit, and I worked with these guys, and but I never thought about writing books, man. I'm far from an intellectual kind of person. I have degrees and all that kind of stuff, but I'm a street guy. It's where my heart's at, where my head's at. I know, I kind of pick things up as I go. But that first book I wrote, and I was really kind of angry about the situation that I was in, getting roped into all these politics and stuff like that. So when I first started writing, it was real angry. I was writing about this person did me wrong, that person did me wrong, this person did me wrong. And you know what? That doesn't get you anywhere. During the course of telling my stories, and any cop can do this, absolutely anybody who's worked in law enforcement for any amount of time can do the same thing I did. Just look around you and look at the guys that you work with, and look at the guys that showed you, trained you, brought you along, taught you all the tricks of the trade. And then I started writing about those guys, and that kind of changed the message entirely. It became very positive, and I realized that if I write about these guys and the things that they do, I got my stories, I got my own stories, but I can tell their stories even better. Yes. So, a lot of what I write in my books, and in both of them, is just a tribute to the guys that I worked with, just it's a way of saying thanks for all they've done for me over the years.
Well, one of the things you talk about that was, I think it's talked about amongst law enforcement, but I never seen it described this way. You refer to, there are cops and then there are career police officers, right? And so when I read that, I went down the list of the cops that I knew and worked with, and then the career police officers. Describe, for those who don't understand, who've never really seen that before, what is a cop versus a career police officer?
I'll tell you what, I get that one. I can't take credit for it. It's from a sergeant I had, Mike Robbins. This guy looked like Chuck Norris, and this dude, he was a bad dude. He was into all the martial arts and at a very high level, but he was a cop to his core. Still is. He's retired now, but great guy. But he would always tell us, he's like, look, career police officers, they come in, and it takes all kinds, mind you. All right, because over the years, when I make that distinction, a lot of people get insulted by that. Well, I just wrote my calls and did my job. Hey, no, it's not a knock at anybody. All right. But Ruffian is about crime reduction. It's about going in, knowing a neighborhood, taking over, and fixing things. Career police officers don't know how to do that. Cops do. All right. Guys who can pick it apart, undress it, figure out a problem, and then, come up with a solution for it, and then go do it and execute. Those are cops. But I said, I catch a lot of heat, but career police officers, there's different roles everybody has. You got traffic guys that are experts in their field. You got people that are community resource officers that can go into neighborhoods, sit down with folks, talk and all that kind of stuff. And then you got beat guys who are very, very good at walking around, waving, talking to people, and making the community feel good about them being there. Yeah. But then when the shit jumps off, you want the other guys.
Right.
You want the cops coming in and doing what they can do. I could play nice with the best of them, but it was not my forte. My forte, I was the guy you called when it jumped off. If you wanted it fixed, or you had dope, guns, that kind of problem in your neighborhood, those are the cops are the ones you want coming in to fix that.
And it takes, as you mentioned, it takes all kinds to run a police agency, but it's the cops to get the work done. The career police officer is generally like
the crime fighting, to get the crime fighting. Everybody's doing work.
Yeah. And it takes the career policeman to be the guy who, the admin person, the things that need to get done that the cops don't want to do. And then there's the cops who are
have to be, and it's very important that it gets done. Like I said, I don't think one side is more important than the other, but again, the emphasis in this book is to show how the two prongs work together.
Yeah. And so I saw it. I was like, that's an interesting point of view, the way you wrote it. One of the things you talk about in there is you talk about the thin blue line.
Yeah, it's funny because you and I both know, man, the thin blue line is not what it's portrayed in movies and on TV.
Yeah. And I've never seen it described that way, the thin blue line. And so what's your point of view on the thin blue line as you wrote in the book?
Well, it's real fucking thin. How about that? No, man, everybody, you look at movies like Serpico and you look at Training Day, you look at all these movies that go, and everything is showing these dirty cops. Every cop is corrupt, and that. Then you put it into the real world. Everything after, I'd say Trayvon Martin, but in 2012, but 2014, Ferguson, Missouri, everybody's talking about cops and this code of silence, and they all protect each other and stuff like that. And that is a perception that I think could not be more wrong, especially in today's day and age. Man. My experience with it, and I'm guilty of it myself a little bit. The thing is cops working together, they're not looking to see each other succeed, man. Cops love it when other cops fail, or if they can get some dirt on another cop, man, telegram, telephone, tell a cop, and that news is getting out, man. They're not covering up for each other. That in the perception that I see, especially when I talk to people, I go around and talk a lot, and everyone's like, "Oh, cops are always covering up for each other." Bullshit,
right?
And I can't tell you that. Our chief wound up in federal prison on some shit that, yeah, I don't think it was anywhere near what they made it out to be. He was a gambler, but gamblers and police chiefs have been gambling for 100 years in Savannah, Georgia. You get your first black police chief, and now you got a problem with it. That tells you a little bit about the South. But people love that. They love to see the fall of, and from the inside. I'm not even talking about the community. I'm talking about cops inside. Like, ugh, I always knew he was dirty. Yeah, well, whatever. I heard this and I heard that. It was a big difference, and nobody should know better than a cop. It doesn't matter what you heard. It matters what you can prove.
On one point of view, the thin blue line is good, I guess, because there's that loyalty you're supposed to have to one another, right? And respect and wanting to each other to be successful. But the truth is, like you wrote it, it's an unfortunate truth that you wrote about, man. Like, I've never seen anybody write about like that, to be honest with you, because, and I think I sent you a message. I said, whoa, man, that is the most hardest truth I've ever seen when you talk about the thin blue line. Because on one hand, law enforcement is very competitive, right? We compete against each other. The problem is sometimes your win is, some police officers see the other guy's success as his failure, because his buddy succeeded, got promoted, or did something cool, got some recognition. Other officers see it as their failure, and there's a lot of trash talking that happens. Like things like, "Oh, you must be dirty." That and I'm just, what's that?
It's haterade. That's why I drink it all the time.
Yeah. And I remember seeing that a lot, and it's an unfortunate reality. And unfortunately, I think in some cases, almost become part of the culture. It's part of a culture that has to change. I think within police, there's a lot of personal development that has to happen, so that, because they're so full of such negative exposure in their lifetime, in their career, that they become very negative thinking themselves. Everybody's an asshole but them, but really, you're probably the asshole, dude. You know what I'm saying? And yes, there are bad people out there.
It goes back to what we were talking about there with career police officers and cops. There's a lot of jealousy. Everybody thinks because you have a badge and a gun that you're the one, you can solve a murder. Just, every cop can solve a murder. Every cop can buy drugs. Every cop can, reconstruct an accident scene. Every cop can do, all of these things, man. Let me tell you something. If you got in a fatal wreck on the interstate that comes through here, I-95, I'm the last guy that you would ever want out there, because I'm just, to me, it's all just rolled over cars. You take a guy that's an expert in traffic, they can tell you by looking at skids and that kind of stuff. Well, he must have been going about this fast, and the car rolled and did this. I'm like, how the hell, how do you figure that out? But they're experts. And the thing is, you have to appreciate stuff like that.
Oh, yeah.
But again, take that guy, give him an award or promote him, everybody else behind, rather than saying, oh, that guy's an expert. They're gonna say, oh, he's a kiss ass, or he's the chief's friend, or this, that, and the other thing. It's like, dude, just appreciate what the guy's good at.
Yeah.
And
it takes hours to perfect that. It takes a long time to perfect that, to become good at something like that.
It takes years. And again, you got to give people the respect they deserve for being experts in their field.
Yeah.
And I got to tell you, it goes back to what we talked about before, leadership. All right. And I always learn from my leaders. I could take somebody's legs out from under them and pick apart everything he's ever done wrong in his career. But does that make me better at anything? Not at all. If you focus on your own professional development, make yourself better, then you're the one doing the things. And regardless of what everybody says, and of course, there's always politics mixed into it, but hard work is going to get you ahead. Everybody I've ever seen succeed, they work very hard at what they do.
One of the things you talk about in the book that's you see it on television, you see it on movies or TV shows, but I've never read about it in a book. You talk about people's unwillingness to cooperate with police. Such a problem.
Yeah.
Such a problem of people not wanting. They want you to do like you say, F you, do your job, right? But they want you to do the job.
That's the name of the first chapter.
No, they want you to do your job, but nobody wants to help. Nobody wants to help.
Well, and I think here's the thing. I think nobody wants to help is a strong statement. a lot of people are scared to help,
A lot of people are
because
scared to help.
the reality of it is in most situations, especially here in Savannah, all the violent crime occurs in poor neighborhoods, and the
Yeah.
thing is everybody has to live in those neighborhoods, and it's more acceptable in today's society to be a murderer than it is to be a snitch. The thing is, a murderer can walk around his neighborhood every day and people are afraid of him. They're not going to fuck with him. They're not going to say a thing. They're just going to let him go by and do his business because they don't want to get in the way in that. A snitch, however, once they get that label, man, whether it's true or not, because let me tell you, a lot of people get falsely accused of being informants and snitches and
Right.
that kind of stuff. And their life after that label is stuck on them is miserable.
It
Their
follows
kids
them to
can't go
jail
to school.
sometimes.
Oh, it's terrible. But
Yeah.
it's the society we live in today where, like I said, it's more acceptable to be a killer than it is to be a snitch. And that's absurd. But you and I both know you cannot effectively police in a community unless you have information from the street, man. You can't do it.
That's a good point. So who's to blame for that? Who's to blame for an eyewitness not wanting to cooperate with a police officer? How much blame does law enforcement or responsibility they have in that, and versus the people? How much? How do we,
But it's both. All right. And here's
Yeah.
the thing. So huge thing. And, I go into this in the book a lot, but it drives me nuts every day. Like I'm talking to you about it right now. My neck is flexing because I get pissed. Our city council, their big thing is if you see something, say something.
Right.
We need the community's help. Okay. Well, yeah, you need the community's help. But again, here in Savannah and every place else in the country, when the cops come and say, hey, did you see something? Tell me what you saw. The answer is going to be, fuck you, do your job.
Right.
It's like, God, it's frustrating. But so if we're going to lay blame, it's twofold. Okay. The first thing is it is the cops. All right. Because the cops need to be very intelligent about how they draw that information out. You have to be very careful about how you do it to protect your witnesses and figure out. I had a lot of people give me tips that I could do my job well enough where I never needed to use them to give me any information. All I needed them to do is point me in the right direction. So you get me in the right direction, I'm going to do my job and I'm going to go do that.
So are you saying you think there's a lack of trust then that over years is just amounted to where there's just a lack of trust in law enforcement?
Well, look what's happening in the country. Again, since Ferguson, Missouri, man, everything that the public has been told and shown and is broadcast 24 hours a day on every, CNN, MSNBC, everything is, we're going to get to the bottom of what the cops did wrong. The cops did this wrong. The cops are out there maliciously killing minorities. They're doing all these things. So, I mean, after a while, society's like, well, shit, I don't want to go anywhere near this, racist rogue band of killers that are out there. I'm not telling them anything. They're a bunch of killers. And, so society has kind of deemed officers that, but then you have police officers, some of them doing the wrong things to reinforce that and make them think, well, shit, I can't trust these guys, man. I can't tell you 80% of my career was spent just talking to people, not about anything serious, just talking to people, letting them know, hey, and my code on the street was basically, if I tell you I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. If a bad guy says, hey man, seriously, look, am I going to jail? I never bullshit them. Like, yeah, probably. Unless something major changes, this is what's happening. But if you don't bullshit people, after a while, I mean, you've been in this game. They appreciate you letting them know what it is, man.
Yeah, they respect that. But I do follow the same sentiment. I think law enforcement holds ultimately it's the responsibility of law enforcement to always have that trust in the community. And I realize sometimes you're just not going to have it. Some people just don't like cops, no matter how good of a person you might be. Some people just not going to like you. They're not going to like you.
Yep.
But I think we should definitely do a better job at making sure that we win them over, because ultimately we're there to police, and we can't police without the people. if it's just if otherwise it'd be like a dictatorship. It'll be like we looked at as oppressors, right? We're just policing, we're just oppressing, keeping people down. When it comes to policing, in order for it to be successful, we have to earn the trust of the people, so that in turn they can trust us with information. And
you know, it all boils down to respect, though, man.
Yeah.
If you go into a community and you show them that you respect not only them but their culture and their neighborhood and the people in it, they will respect you back. And I think that's another misnomer that people just, oh, everybody hates cops. Not everybody hates cops, man.
Right.
Not everybody hates cops. Not every poor person hates the police, because you know what? It usually is the folks in the poor neighborhood that need the police the most. They're the ones who are being terrorized by the criminals. You know, I worked in some pretty rough housing projects down here, and 97% of the people in the neighborhood, in the projects, were the nicest people on earth, trying to get on their feet, trying to do the right thing. But that they were being terrorized and basically held hostage by that 3% of the can't get rights. You know, they would not play by the rules. They didn't understand words like please and thank you.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's where you need your quote unquote cops to go in and get that. But that 97%, man, when you show them that you are about it and that you are able to do something about that 3%, they respect you enough to let you know what's going on. But if you don't have that respect, believe me, you ain't getting that information.
So let me ask you this. You kind of mentioned it a few times, and people love to throw the word around of racism all the time. The police are just racist. They're just walking up on people and shooting black kids, minorities being highly profiled and stuff like that. You go into some stats in your book, some actual stats, so you can back up what's really happening in terms of the high crime rate, the actual shootings, justified shootings versus murders and stuff like that, right? But another thing, though, is you talk about how neighborhoods, lower income neighborhoods, typically have the higher rate of crime. And sometimes people look at that and they look at it as, well, it's because they're poor. It's because sometimes people just want to victimize one another, and they're just the weakest in the bunch to do that, I guess.
It's natural selection, man. I mean, predators prey on the weak. It's that simple.
Yeah.
And the thing is, then you mix some desperation into that, and it gets even worse. Then you mix race into it, and it gets even worse.
You know, but that's something that really has been sold, has been fed to people today by the media. Racism. And yes, it exists. It does exist. I know what it looks like. I know what it feels like. But I always, whenever that happened to me as a youngster, I didn't look at it as I was this poor victim. I looked at it as, well, that's just the way that person feels about it. You know what? There are some people I don't like either, whether they be Hispanic, white, black. I just don't like their behavior, what they do. You know, and it doesn't make me a racist. It just says I don't like what that person does. Therefore, I'm not going to associate with that kind of behavior or those type of people from all walks.
Well, it's become, unfortunately, it's become an excuse. A lot of people take a victim mentality, and what's happened in today's society, unfortunately, is we're not looking at the real problems anymore. Okay, everybody's focusing on this victimization and all that kind of stuff. We're not looking at the hard numbers of what's actually going on. So how can you solve a problem if you're not being honest about what the real problem is? And the real problem is, you know, and it gets confused, and a lot of things get cast onto law enforcement. But, you know, and I'm no sociologist, but I think it's generally agreed that the causes of crime are poverty, lack of education, lack of opportunity. All right. Well, guess what? It's the city governments, it's the state governments, and it's the federal governments to create jobs and work on the economic development and this kind of stuff. It is not the police department's job. All right. It is not a police officer's job to educate children. I mean, let them know what's right, what's wrong, and that kind of stuff. But that kind of stuff happens in the home. Police officer's job really is simple. It's to enforce the laws that are on the books, and it is to keep the good guys safe from the bad guys. And it's that simple.
You know, I tell people that, look, a policeman's job in the end is to take out the boogeyman. That's it. Yeah, that is your job. You have one job. You go get the bad guy. That's it. Aside from that, you might
You
serve.
can be super nice about it. All the extras, you can do all those things, you know, and that's really what Ruffian is about. Ruffian is about a crime reduction strategy that talks about getting the bad guys and surgically cutting them out of dangerous neighborhoods, while at the same time doing a community oriented thing with, you know, trash pickups, getting to know people, get the city involved to address blight issues, and, you know, hopefully work, you know, our goal was to head up and work with schools and that kind of stuff. But that does not make it the police's responsibility. Like, you know, it's not the police chief's jobs, it's not his mission. It's not his responsibility to create work for citizens. His job is basically to make sure that his guys are out there keeping people safe and doing it in an ethical and moral way.
Yeah. And you did a heck of a job with the work you did with Toby and some of those other guys. Now, tell me a little bit so that, I mean, I don't want to give away what's in here, but you did an incredible job putting together cops together from different agencies, by the way, different agencies. You got the church leaders together. You brought in the mayor. You got buy-in from the chief. They respected your work. They even complimented you once or twice, man. That was kind of cool, right? When you ever get that?
Nah,
you did a heck of a job, man.
I tell you, man, it's just because we have a chief that got it. You know, our chief was born and raised in Savannah, Georgia, and he loved this city. Yeah. Vietnam vet, and he knew what it take. You know, when crime got to a certain level, you whack it down. It's just, that's what, you know, he knew it was important to do that. And again, you know, police work is changed so much over the years with technology and all of these things. But the underlying thing is old school police work, man. Get out on foot, talk to people, know who, what, when, where they belong, what times they belong there. You know, just getting to know your beat and that kind of stuff. And that's all we did was, you know, basically a basic narcotics investigation.
Look,
while at the same time,
you're not giving yourself enough credit, Kevin. You're not giving yourself enough credit, bro, because you on patrol identified resources, people who are willing to cooperate with you, all those things you write about that are challenging in police work, and you got people to help you. You identify what the motivation was, and they helped you. And these people went in and they bought drugs, and you were able to identify the bad guy, the drug dealer that was, you know, overtaking the neighborhood. You know, you guys did a heck of a job. You guys hit it neighborhood by neighborhood by neighborhood, and in the end, your stats prove that crime went down, shootings went down, calls for service went down. You know, and along the way, you did mention that you helped clean up the backyard as well. You know, a side yard.
Yeah, no, and you know, the best illustration of the whole operation was the thing is, you know, again, we had all this technology because we got the feds involved, the ATF. Yeah. So the ATF to me is, you know, the most proactive and most effective. They're the blue collar guys of federal law enforcement. Yep. You know, they're the ones that will come in and, you know, how many FBI agents do you get to answer their phone at 3 o'clock in the morning because you got a good CI,
right?
Our local ATF office guys like Toby Taylor and Lou Velozzi, Ralph Bignesi, you know,
Lou Velozzi, yeah,
all these guys. We had great office, but again, great leaders who let us go out and do it. But the big thing was, so we had a poll cam. You know, the ATF put up a camera in our first neighborhood, our first target neighborhood, so we could watch the hotspot. You know, every neighborhood's got their hotspots and all that, but we had one. There's this one intersection, man, where it went down. I mean, everybody was going. So that's where we started. We kicked in all the doors in that intersection. So for about a year, we just locking people up. You know, we put anybody who opened up shop, we put them, and then they got indicted by the feds. So, you know, that got out in the neighborhood real quick. Like, oh shit, these guys ain't playing.
Yeah.
We move into the next neighborhood.
Guys talking about stuff like that when I was a cop. They didn't want to, like, there was an operation called Trigger Lock when I was a cop in conjunction with the ATF, and nobody wanted to get caught dirty with a gun then because they knew that was time. Yeah, you were saying.
And that's it. Again, deterrence, which I'll come back to that later. But deterrence is is a big thing. You know, if you tell people, again, it's a respect thing. You tell people you're going to do something, you actually come back and do it. People take notice, especially bad guys, because they don't want to go,
No.
even though they know it's part of the game, they don't want to go to prison. They're not signing up for it. But we moved into the second neighborhood and we were, knee deep in it towards the end of the operation. And 1:30 in the morning, Toby's looking at his phone and one of the dope boys comes out in the corner, and you know him just because, we had so much interaction with him. He had a distinct way of walking and that kind of stuff. But we knew who he was by looking. We could see it on the camera and we had his phone number. So Toby calls the dude up and says, "Hey man, what are you doing on my corner? It's 1:30, man. You got no reason to be there." And you could see the dude looking left and right, like, "Where the fuck are you?" He's like, "I'm everywhere, bro."
Yeah.
He's like, "You need to clear that corner." And dude said, "All right," hung up the phone, and we watched him go inside.
Right.
The thing is, man, so you just did a patrolman's job by looking at a phone.
Yeah.
And that doesn't happen overnight. It takes a
No.
long time to get to a point where not only who, what, when, where, have their phone number, have their contact number to be able to call them directly and say, "Bro, go inside."
Not today.
So, he cleared a corner without even being in the same part of the city.
When I
wasn't even working.
All I thought of was my time when I spent it with a gang task force, and everything you guys were doing is what that task force was doing. We're going after the gangsters, which, by the way, we could say gang. I don't know. You guys said you guys couldn't say that. You guys couldn't say gang back in the day in your time. I mean,
man, yeah. in Savannah for a long time.
Yeah.
Well, because
what happened? They are a gang.
Yeah, but tourism is the huge industry here in Savannah.
Okay.
So the city government, they don't say the word gang. But again, in 2013, there was a big shooting at a fair.
Yeah.
It was a big fair for the year, and there was two rival gangs went at it. So they admitted on the news in 2013, we have gangs, that kind of stuff. And then once they admitted that, and the tourism dollar didn't go down, it stayed the same. Well, then you could say gang all you want. So
wow. Look, did you write this book to be controversial? Because you refer to cops that they're not heroes. Explain it to me one more time. You said they're not heroes?
Well, the thing is, you know what? You know some hero cops, right?
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, and I'll say this, and it pisses people off too, but I've served in combat with soldiers, and guess what? Not all of them are heroes.
Right.
I was over there with a bunch of people that never fired a shot, never went, I was there with guys. Shit, I fired a bunch of shots when I was over there. I'm no fucking hero, man.
Right.
Now, I served with a couple. To me, a hero is something, you got to earn that one. That to me is not something, but I've served with heroes. I've served with soldiers that were heroes. I've served with cops that are heroes. I mean, guys that I look up to and seen some pretty miraculous things. I did some cool shit when I was a cop. I did some cool shit when I was a soldier, but I'm no hero, man.
Right.
I just worked with guys and girls that did some pretty amazing shit. But I think the word hero it's watered down.
It's
overused. Just because you have a badge and a gun, just because you put on a uniform, doesn't make you a hero. And the thing is, that's why when all the pandemic shit goes on, I know we're going to hear this. We're going to hear about this one, Lou. But just because you showed up to work during the pandemic, doesn't make you a hero.
You're not a hero.
Sorry.
Hey, in the Army, I remember hearing guys saying, "The only good hero is a dead hero."
And there you go.
And there's a lot of respect in that.
And that's it. Like I said, you got to earn that. Well, I know some guys that took some pretty hot lead, and I'll give them hero, and thank God they're still here. But the ones that paid the ultimate sacrifice. I mean, that's why Lou and I do End of Watch with Bootsy and Sal is pay tribute to those guys that laid it all out there for not only us, not only for watching their brothers back, but for the community.
Yep. So, but I'm with that. I share the same sentiment. Just because you're a cop doesn't make you a hero. Just because you're a fire boy doesn't make you a hero. You got to earn that stripe. You got to earn that, and not everyone achieves it. Like, I don't feel like I'm a hero anymore. I didn't do anything heroic. I just did a job that was extremely dangerous, and I volunteered for it, and I paid a price for it. It doesn't make me a hero. But there are people that I work with
but it was
heroic.
To me, it was a duty and a service, and I signed up for it. I volunteered. I raised my right hand, but it was my duty. And to be honest with you, it was an honor to be able to do it. It's an
Yep.
honor. I
Yeah.
used to sneeze and people say, God bless you. And I'd respond simply, God already blessed me. I'm a soldier. To me, that was the thing. You don't need titles of hero and stuff like that. But it's important because there are guys that are heroes. There are
Sure.
people that go, when I think of guys like Mike Murphy, the Navy SEAL, when I think of, guys like that went out and put their lives above, protecting their guys over their own safety, those are heroes.
Yeah.
That's something. And just because you're a police officer and you're putting yourself between the good guys and the bad guys, unless you actually do it, doesn't make you a hero. And I know
Right.
that it's an unpopular statement because we all like to think we're real special, man. And believe me, I love me some me, but there ain't nothing heroic about me.
You're
I'm
never
fucking
as good as you
charming
say you
and
are.
I'm pretty handsome, but I'm no hero.
You're never as good as you say you are, or you think you are, and you're never quite as bad as you think you might be too. So we're always somewhere in between. We're somewhere in between. But this book is full of just straight just police work, man. You took some guys, you did the PowerPoints, right? You put investigations together, you brought in outside agencies, you got buy-in from local government, church leaders, and you got the job done. And you think about all the people you helped in that community, man. You and the guys you work with, just the resident who's been there all her life for his life, now being surrounded by all this crime. But you guys did a lot of good work, man. I think this is a just down and dirty, man, police work, man. You know what I'm saying? And so I really appreciate this book. One of the things that I have a note here to go over is, I had never heard this before, by the way. You talk about, you compare, when people complain about police all the time, right? You talk about, it's like a doctor. He's practicing medicine because it isn't an exact science. He's practicing medicine. In law enforcement, we're practicing law enforcement. That's a very good point. Can you kind of explain that a little bit, kind of expand that a little bit?
But think about the years of education and training and, again, practice that a doctor has to go through, and they go through, and the majority of the time, man, they are doing excellent work. They're cutting out cancer, they're repairing appendixes, they're doing all these it's basically miracle work, very scientific, but they're doing stuff, but they are well trained to do that. Okay. But guess what? During some of those surgeries and some of misdiagnosis and that kind of stuff, things go wrong. People die. It gets tragic. You cut out the wrong thing. And I don't know. But guess what? I've never been to medical school. Never wanted to be a doctor. I've treated my fair share of trauma victims in combat and on the streets, responding to 911 calls, but I was not a trained medical professional. So for me to look at a doctor and say, hey, oh, you're doing that wrong, you should do this, you should have done this or that, it's really not my place to say. You flip that to the coin of law enforcement and what happens today. Just because you see a segmented video of a call, if you don't have any law enforcement training or experience, don't look at that. Don't look at that segmented video that you're only getting from one angle and only part of it without context, and think that you can judge what cops are doing.
Right.
That's just because a doctor goes into surgery and makes a mistake, and unfortunately somebody dies as a result of it. It's the same thing in police work. But we're not defunding the medical profession because a mistake was made.
Nobody's
why is this huge call to defund the police?
Right. Nobody wants to defund the doctors.
No, and the thing is stay in your fucking lane.
Right.
Know what you're talking about before you come jumping out. Now, does that mean when it's done horribly wrong that it doesn't need to be addressed? No, not at all.
Correct.
Again, we go back to that thin blue line. Do we cover it up? No, hell no. You admit your mistakes and you figure out a way to do it better. But that's also why our criminal justice system is the way it is. You put it in front of 12 of your peers and judge impartially and unfairly, or fairly and impartially. You judge and say, are they guilty? Are they not guilty? Is this the right way of doing things, or is this the wrong way of doing things? And you go and fix it. And believe me, I've seen enough third world countries and real oppressive governments, which we do not have here in the United States,
Right.
To know we live in a great country, man. It's not a perfect system, but it's the best system in the fucking world. And it allows us to sit here and talk as much shit as we want to, without any repercussion of it, other than, well, you hurt my feelings, and then they'll say things back and hurt my feelings. But the Army didn't issue me any feelings, so I don't worry about that too much.
They didn't issue you feelings. How do you keep a city safe, man? What are your suggestions on how to keep a city safe?
The biggest thing, man, is one, you have to be very honest about what the problem is.
Okay.
And then two, you have to gather intelligence to figure out exactly what's going on. In Savannah, violent crime, guns and people using guns is the problem in Savannah. And the way you combat that is you take the guns away from the bad guys.
Right.
You go out there actively and very proactively get the guns from the bad, and when you catch them, you put them away. You remove them from society. There's actually a chapter, Lou, that didn't make it into the book, and I'm going to release it as a bonus chapter here pretty soon, probably in the Audible version, where my proposal is, and oh my God, you and I both know our Second Amendment loving gun stroke buddies who, I'm a gun toting madman myself, and I believe in every amendment of the United States Constitution. But let's make every gun crime a felony at the state, local, and federal level. Every gun crime, make it a felony. Because if there's one thing that we know in this world not to fuck around with, it's a gun. And you know it from an early age. You don't play with fire because it burns you. Well, don't play with guns because the repercussions of playing with them or not following the rules with them are life and death. So make them all felonies, and let's take away probation and parole in the state and local system, that when you get caught with a gun, you go to prison and you serve that time. I don't care no such thing to me as a misdemeanor crime. If you're dumb enough to screw around with a gun and not play by the rules, you go to prison. And when they say you get 10 years, you go for 10 years. And that's just how it goes, because like I said, I touch on deterrence again, but that's how you start that. But before people go out and start shooting each other, you go and you get the guns from them when they're standing on the corner or driving around your city with their guns with the intention of hurting other people. Get them before they do it. And the only way to do that is intelligence. Then you have to come up with a strategy to actually do something about the intelligence you have. And then you need cops, not career police officers, but you need real men and women with the guts to go out there and stand between the good guys and the bad guys and go get it. And so everybody says, well, we can't arrest our ways out of a problem. Well, I'm telling you, you lock enough people up with the guns that are willing to shoot people, you get rid of the ones that are willing to do it, it works itself out.
Giuliani did it in New York.
He did, and then they've undone it, and look what's happening.
Yeah. So last thing, man, there's a price to pay being a soldier or being law enforcement. And a lot of times it's your sanity, it's your health. You know what I mean?
Yeah, dude, I'm fucking nuts. I don't know.
What price have you paid?
What price? I've never heard the question asked that way. That's an interesting way to look at it. I'll put it more than the price I paid, the mistakes that I made, as a result of the strain. And I don't make that as an excuse, man, because I own my mistakes. Everything, all the mistakes I've made. I wrote in that book too. My favorite book I've ever read was the autobiography of Malcolm X, which is pretty funny coming from a white boy from Connecticut.
You reference MLK a lot.
In the last. Oh yeah, no, he's a hero of mine, man.
Yeah.
I believe in nonviolence. I never practice it myself, but I appreciate if you don't have a guy like that stepping up and saying, hey, do the right thing, then nobody ever will. But Malcolm X said, all the mistakes were mine, and anything I did right, the credit's to God. And I'm not a very religious man, but I am spiritual. And the thing is, I don't take a lot of credit for anything that I ever accomplished, but I definitely take the lumps for the things that I did wrong. Alcohol became a huge problem for me in my career because I did not go out. I thought I was too tough to seek counseling or mental help or even peer support. You know, I was
Yeah.
too cool, too tough. I don't need that. I'll get through it. And it cost me a lot. It cost me my career ultimately, cost me a lot of time with my son. Thank God he is who he is, and he persevered and has come out shining. But you know, the effects, it cost me a marriage, it cost me a whole bunch of friendships. It's cost a lot of things, but you know, I've learned from those mistakes. You know, I'm getting married in October to a woman. You know, she gets it. I can tell her exactly what's going on. But over the last couple of years, since my demise, you know, the friendships that I've developed with guys like you and you know, the community that we formed in our podcast worlds and book worlds and movies and TVs and that kind of stuff. You meet the guys. You know, my grandfather used to say, "I know my own, and my own know me." The good side of that is, man, is I recognize it in you, you recognize it in me, and we look out for each other. What that thin blue line was supposed to be, that's happened to me more in my post law enforcement career from the guys that have gone through shit. You know, they've been there, suffered. So it costs me a lot, but it's also given me a lot. You know, it's given me a huge platform to do good things for younger officers coming in and say, "Look, man, don't make the mistakes that I have made, and here's why." So, you know, I've written these 2 books so young cops can see, holy shit, they used to be able to police. But 2, be careful of putting your foot to the gas pedal the whole time because you will burn out. And I remember as a young cop, a kid, a career police officer telling me, "Hey, dude, you're going to burn out if you keep this." And I was disgusted by him. Well, let me tell you, when I crashed and burned, I think about him every day. And I'm like, shit, he told me so. He told me so.
Well, look, man, I think you've done a great heck of a job of bouncing back, right? From that price you paid, right? Your time as a law enforcement officer, because we all pay a price. It's going to cost. We're not getting out without paying some price. A little bit of us is used up, right? And so then it's up to us to reinvent ourselves, reinvent our lives, and seek other things that are going to help reinvent us. And I think the key in that is reinvention. You're going through a process of reinvention. You become an author. You and Lou Velosi have an excellent show on a podcast called End of Watch. You guys doing a hell of a job there. And you got 2 books now. Your son is now, taking the flag. You know, you've handed over the flag to him. You know, and
I don't have to be the tough guy in the family anymore, which is cool.
You know, this is great, man. When you wrote this book, at the end of the book, I read here. It says one of the things that's changed about you. It says you wrote this book because right now you're in love. Right.
That's it, man.
Look at you.
I'm telling you. And you never would have got that out of me 10 years ago.
I didn't think so. I was like, Kevin Grogan. Right on.
No, I've gotten soft in my old age, man. And the thing is, like I said, I don't have to threaten you. I just call the kid and he'll be there. And, you know, he handles all that shit for me.
That's awesome. Hey, look, Kevin, dude, keep up the good work, bro. I'm going to make sure everybody gets a chance to get this book. Ruffian, is that correct? And right,
Ruffian.
Ruffian.
And check out the t-shirts, man. If you go to the1108store.com, you can get t-shirts, you can get books, all that kind of stuff. Of course, the books are available on Amazon, but
I'll put it down here. I'll put it on there.
The thing about all this to me is, like you said, you kind of reinvent yourself.
Yeah.
One of the big things, you know, not only me, but you know, my buddy Lou, Dr. Marla Freeman with Badge of Life, you know, Sergeant Major Satterley, he spends a lot of time talking about suicide prevention, man. And the thing is, you got 2 choices in life. You keep your feet moving or you quit. There's no quitting me, Lou. There's no quitting you. You know, there's people who are struggling. You know, there is more to life when you're not that, you know, the big diagnosis these days is PTSD, you know, post-traumatic stress and all that kind of stuff. And I'm aware of it. You know, I'm not the big proponent that a lot of other people are, but I'll tell you what PTSD is to me was, I served in combat in Sadr City in the northwest quadrant of Baghdad. I served in some of the toughest housing projects in Savannah, Georgia. I've solved murders. I've, done all these things. Now I'm an old man. I don't do any of that shit anymore. All that cool stuff that used to make me feel so alive is all gone. Does that mean I have to stop living? Not at all, man. I've found so much fun in my kids and my grandkids and my, my soon to be bride, my good friends, the rest of life, all that stuff that I didn't look at when all I thought about was chasing bad guys and saving the world. Now I kick back and try and relax and enjoy the good things, man. And, writing books is fun. Talking to people about TV shows and that kind of shit, it's fun. Coming on podcasts with you, it's a good time and I enjoy it. And the thing is, man, you got to kick back, enjoy the good things in life. And if you're struggling and you're at a point where you don't think you can do it anymore, when you can't figure out how to reinvent yourself, call me. I'll help you, or call somebody else, whoever you need. Just don't quit. Keep your feet moving.
Right on. Hey, man, like Kevin, I appreciate your time. Enjoy your book signings. You sent me, the other one was signed. You sent me. I'm a little sad this one wasn't signed, but I'm gonna live. You
must have got it on Amazon. I get one to you, man.
Hey, tell Velosi I'm waiting for his book. Okay, signed. All right, tell Velosi that. And so I appreciate you, man. Go ahead.
We'll put the package together, and I tell you the best thing about that. All right, so Fat Low Kevin Grogan sitting there. When my first book came out, my best friend from nursery school calls me up. He's like, "Hey," so now you got to understand, this kid grew up in my house, and I'm the youngest of 5, so he knows my whole family. So he calls me up and he's like, "Hey, man, did you write a book?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Wow, your family, all the people that I thought would write a book, you'd be the last." I'm like, "Thanks, Dick. I really, really appreciate that." So we get talking. We're laughing for a little bit, and at the end of the conversation, he says to me, he says, "Hey," he's like, "do me a favor." He's like, "Send me one and sign it for me, would you?" And I said, "Dude, we were in 3rd grade. We're sitting on the fence in Miss Lawton's backyard. I told you one day you'd ask me for my autograph, and you just did it."
Right
on. Dude, there was dead silence on the other end of the phone. About 4 or 5 seconds, he goes, "Fuck," and he hung up on me. So that's my favorite autograph story of all time.
That's awesome, man. All right, Kevin, have a great one, bro. Thank you so much for your time. I look forward to seeing you again here in person very soon. Have yourself a great night, man. Thank you so much.
Absolutely, man. Safe travels home.
Will do. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Vive la France.
Vive la France.